It is time for StreetWise with former chief of the New York City Sheriff's Department, former chief of the Seagate Police Department, retired New York City detective, Time Warner Public Access Media Award, Joe Franklin Super Excellence in Broadcasting Memory Lane Award, New York Veteran Police Association StreetWise Productions, host of StreetWise, Mr. Lou Telano.
Good evening, and welcome back to StreetWise. My guest this evening is an international speaker, activist, educator, author, and I have to tell you this, if your cliche turning a negative into a positive is exactly what my guest did, into a big positive. I'm going to jump around just a little bit. Now, you have to start off by saying we do have something in common because we were both in jail, except that I was the correction officer and he was what they call the inmate at the time. Well, so anyway, it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Khalil Osiris. Professor Khalil, welcome to StreetWise.
He's coming in right now, though.
Okay. I just introduced you. I hope you heard me, Khalil.
Yeah, how are you today, Lou?
Yeah, okay. It's good to see you. I know I just touched on how you turned a negative into a major positive, which is unusual. I touched on your background, of course, and what's amazing is, because you're familiar with my background, and
yes.
I'm so familiar with what they call rehabilitation, the revolving door system, recidivism, and I think in this country, if you break it down, depending on the state, recidivism rate, California is 65%. That's a lot.
Yes.
If you break it down for the country, I think it's 45 to 50% of that in the prison system we have recidivism. And but you are the exception to the rule, folks. I have to tell you this: I couldn't do a bachelor's out in the street. I couldn't do a master's out in the street. And Khalil Osiris, Professor Osiris, did all of this while being incarcerated. I don't know if he likes that word, incarcerated.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
How were you able to achieve that?
Well, okay. First of all, my first incarceration, Lou, I was 17 years old.
Right.
And I committed a robbery.
Mm.
And what I can say to you is, a person that I'm sure that is extreme to a lot of folks that a 17-year-old goes out and commits a robbery. I grew up in the end of the 60s, heel of the 60s, and beginning of the civil unrest around protest that just transitioned from the civil rights movement to the black nationalist movement and all those other things. And I was a young kid who got excited by all that and was, I have to say, was in many ways awakened politically by the ideology of the Black Panther Party for self-defense. So here I am, a young kid who's hearing these ideas, seeing these protests, and thinking that, I should be doing something to participate. And I went basically from this kind of happy-go-lucky kid who was top of his class academics, an athlete, one of those kids who you really would expect to succeed, to being a very angry young man.
Yeah.
A very rebellious and a young man who then went on to make some very reckless decisions. So when I robbed I robbed a drugstore. Not because I was using drugs. I just thought I was doing something to attack the system, Lou.
Yeah, I know.
It was senseless. Yes, in hindsight, it was senseless. But at the same time, here's the deal. That's the kind of thinking that's present today in much of the protests that you see in the context of the people participating in the violence.
Right.
And what I can say to you is, that's the minority. I know that when I committed that act, I was guilty. I know that I was guilty. Now, I went to prison at 17 and served 5 years, Lou.
Wow.
Let me just say this. When I got out, I was worse than before I went in.
Really angry.
I was blaming more people now.
Correct.
And I actually had better language to blame them now. And so what happened was I returned to the same kind of behavior. But Lou, here's what I did. The crimes that I did, I concocted them while I was in prison the first time.
Wow.
And so for the next 3 years, I was on a crime spree, and I was finally arrested. And at 25, the judge looked at me. He looked at me. He said, young man, I've spent a couple of days trying to figure out how to sentence you. He said, usually young boys like you come before our court. We know why they're here. And, the broken home, poor education, poor family support, all kinds of factors that we know are common to situations that produce the kind of young people before our court. And the court has mercy for that. The court understands that. He said, but you could have been here today as an attorney representing a client, or the prosecutor representing the citizens of our great state. Instead, you are here today as a criminal defendant. And my only regret is I can't give you more time.
Wow.
And essentially, he sentenced me to 15 to 75 years, a maximum sentence of 75 years. I was 25 years old. Lou, that was essentially a life sentence.
Yes.
In my mind, how I translated it, when that judge when he said it, all I could hear was 75 years. And I remember something about, but if you should change or something could happen, there's an opportunity for parole. But I heard in that moment, Lou, now this was a white judge. He looked even more white because he had white hair and a black robe on. So I'm standing there looking at him, and my lawyer's outraged and everybody's looking around. Now this looked like a typical racial situation of injustice. But let me tell you this. I wasn't on my way back to prison because I had been in the Black Panther Party.
Right.
Or because I had made a mistake.
Wow.
I was on my way back to prison, Lou, because of the choices I made.
Correct.
And so for me, it came down to how much integrity was I prepared to have in that moment? How accountable was I prepared to be, to hold myself in that moment in order to have the kind of reckoning that could change whatever the outcome might be? I understood that there was no one else to blame. That for me, this was an opportunity to really, really investigate how I got there. Not just the offense I committed. That was the easy part. The judge told me what I did. You committed a robbery, you did this, that's that. That wasn't what the question that I needed to answer.
But did the judge say something to you? I think, listening to you, that when he said you could have been A, B, C, or D.
Yes.
Now, you grabbed that. When
it was clear to me he was correct.
Right. But not everyone does. They just shrug it off.
And that's why, and Lou, here's the thing.
And you heard
that's why it's important for people to be honest about their experience. See, I'm saying that there are people, I understand that there are people who are truly victims of injustice and who truly have situations where their sentence is a result of systemic racism and all those kinds of things. I'm not denying any of that. What I'm saying, Lou, is something bigger than that. I'm saying that my story, I would be lying if I told you that I went to prison because of systemic racism.
Right.
I would be lying if I told you that I went to prison because of structural inequality. I would be lying if I sit here in this meeting with you in this conversation and said to you, Lou, it's because that judge was white and he was so racist that's why I got all that time, and that's the story. Now, that's the kind of accountability that I have to have in order for me to get the best out of me.
Well, you accepted the fact that you're the one that screwed up, not everybody else.
They were my choices, Lou.
Yes. Here's the deal.
Yep. So here's what I realized. I realized that I was in prison long before I was ever arrested.
I know. Because
the source of my imprisonment wasn't the jail. It was my own thoughts. But my epiphany was this, Lou. I could get out before I was released.
I know. And you, by the way, you have folks. Professor Osiris has a great book, A Freedom That Comes from Within, and that's what happened to him.
Yes.
You actually, even though you were in jail, you were free.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Because so I had some guiding principles for my journey. One of them is inside prison, turn the cell into a classroom and the prison into a university. Yeah. So I turned it into an opportunity to learn as much as I possibly could under the circumstances. And
why did you do that? You're unusual. You're not, for a person that's in jail, usually they want to work out, tell their war stories,
Yeah.
Play cards, chess, or whatever.
Sure.
But you went the other route.
I'm looking at the majority. Lou, I could look at the majority. First of all, I had gone to prison at 17 years old, gotten out at 22. So I served 5 years before, and I saw how guys lived, and I knew how I lived, and I knew the kinds of things I did, and the net result of that when I got out.
Yeah.
So now that I was back, and I'm looking at the rest of my life, I'm looking at it and seeing it as an opportunity to do something extraordinary. So for me, turning the cell into a classroom and the prison into a university, I didn't need permission to do that.
Right.
I could do that. Listen, even when you're in solitary confinement, you know this, Lou, as a former correctional officer, they at least give you a Bible.
Exactly.
I read the Bible backward and forward 75 times before I stopped counting.
And then you have church service also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's never an opportunity where you can't learn.
Yeah.
And so for me, I just had the benefit, and it's by grace, to attend Boston University.
Wow.
Now, think about this, because there was a Pell Grant in place that allowed people in prison to access a college education, university education. So I applied and attended Boston University, earned my bachelor's and master's degree. Now, think about this, Lou.
Amazing.
I was at the same prison that Malcolm Little became Malcolm X.
Whoa.
I was at Norfolk Prison Colony, and I attended the same university that Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. became Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. So all those years ago, when I was struggling with how to reconcile the political views that I was learning with how to be a great human being, I found reconciliation in my own journey by being in the prison that Malcolm X had served time, attending the university that Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. earned his doctorate, and then figuring out that for me, I had to do something that was reflective of a greater level of consciousness. And for that, I became pen pals with Nelson Mandela's.
I was just going to say that, and then you get connected to
Nelson
Mandela's Mandela family. Now,
yes.
If that's not, how could I say that? It's like meant to be,
or
faith.
She was attending the University of Massachusetts Amherst on a Fulbright scholarship. So, and I studied ferociously while I was in prison. I was always reading, the news, global affairs, all of that constantly. So I knew when she arrived. So what I did is I said, I'm a writer. I'm attending BU. I'm attending Boston University, though in prison I'm attending.
Wow.
I'm going to write her. And so I told her, I wrote her a letter because she had been all over America. She had gone to the White House. She had been to Hyannisport, all these wonderful places. So I wrote her a letter. My opening line was, well, I see that you've been to the White House. I'd like to invite you to the Black House.
Beautiful.
America's prisons.
You always
it was just it was a joke, but then I went on to unpack it for her and say.
One of the things you have that's an asset, you're ahead of yourself. You're 3 or 4 steps ahead. So, I could see that, and that's why you achieved what you achieved. You mentioned, have you ever been to the UN building in New York? Did you ever have the opportunity? You have?
Yes.
Now, when you walk in, what's the first thing you see as soon as you walk in the door?
You talking about the statue there?
The statue of Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
as soon as you walk in the door.
Well, he's the global president.
Yeah.
He's the world's president.
But who would think when you're 17 years old, blaming the world and angry for everything, that you would be Malcolm X,
Yes.
Martin Luther King Jr., and Nelson Mandela? Who would think that, right? I mean, that's an achievement.
I mean, Lou, I'm now senior advisor for the House of Mandela Family Foundation.
Yes.
And my Dr. Makaziwe Mandela, who I was pen pals with then, 25 years later, I went to South Africa, moved there. We met personally because we had never seen each other personally when I was in prison.
That was,
back in the days, we only wrote letters.
That is really a pen pal.
Pen pal.
No pun. That is a pen. From the
that was the real deal. We really had a pen and we really wrote people.
Right. That's let me tell you. Now I think you're on your way to South Africa soon.
Yeah, I live there. I go back and forth. We have the Nelson Mandela International Day celebration that we've done here in America.
You just had that a few weeks ago or something?
We just did our second Nelson Mandela International Day celebration.
Right, and okay.
Here it was celebrated. People from 5 continents participated.
Oh, is that the Reflecting Freedom Network?
Freedom, yes. So Reflecting Freedom Network is our nonprofit organization. And we basically are organized around economic and social justice opportunities for people impacted by incarceration.
Wow.
And our major platform, Lou.
Yes. Now, you're the founder. You're the founder of it.
I'm the founder of it, yes.
Look at that, right? Amazing.
Because, Lou, my whole goal has been, my whole aim has been remove the barriers to successful reentry. Just remove the barriers. And when you remove the barriers, that's one step. The second part of it is to say, here are now opportunities that we're going to provide for you that are absolutely free and accessible.
Wow.
Now, here's the deal, Lou. You're only going to get out of it what you earn. Yes, it's free and the barriers have been removed, but you only get what you earn.
How do we get these kids today to realize that, what you just said? Everything is coming to them. And I'm not just talking about African American kids. You see the demonstrations and the protests. The majority of them are white kids. So it's this generation.
Yes,
how do we get them to get that message? You get what you put into it.
So, Lou, one of my number one kind of priorities in all of my work is to remind people of how powerful they are. In other words, I start with a strength-based approach. I will never get in front of a group of African-American boys and tell them how the system's stacked against them. I would never get in front of them and tell them how powerless they are and how much they should fear the police.
Right.
I would never get in front of them and tell them that they are an endangered species and they better be very careful. No. I'm going to tell them you are powerful beyond measure.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell them that they are so powerful that every choice they make, they need to weigh it. They need to be thoughtful about it. And they need to make sure that it's intentional so that whatever the outcome, they're invested. They lean into it. And I tell them very clearly, and let me share with you some alternatives to that. Let me tell you what that looks like.
Right.
Now, whatever you choose, all I want, I'm going to ask one thing. Is that the best you can do? Is it the best you can do? Because if it's the best you can do under the circumstances, look, that's fine. In this moment, that's the best you can do. Now let's get better. But if you know yourself, it's not the best you can do. It's not the best of who you are. Then it's real simple, Lou.
Wow. My guest is Professor.
We got to hold ourselves accountable.
Yeah, we do. I just want to reintroduce you because we're also on radio. And Professor Khalil Osiris, I hope I didn't kill your name.
Yeah, yes, Khalil Osiris.
Khalil Osiris, Khalil. Now, jumping back, you talked about you were 17 years old, and
yes.
Did you have a father figure in your house?
Absolutely. Let me just say this. I had a father that was hardworking, industrious. My father worked 12 and 14-hour days.
Wow.
Did everything he could. In my household, you know, my father wasn't the kind of guy that told you I love you. His thing was, he was simple. I provide for you. I put food on the table. I put clothes on your back. I make sure you're warm.
That's the old school.
I make sure you have a great school to go to.
Right.
And you better do good in school and get great grades in school. I mean, he was that kind of father.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I grew up, you know, I'm 61. So I grew up on the cusp of that generation where the relationship you had with your father was one of respect. It's simple. Yeah. It's not negotiable.
Right. It's not
negotiable. So I had two parents.
That's true.
Who gave me real clear instructions about what's right and what's wrong. And let me just say this, Lou, when I told you I went to prison at 17, and why I can't tell a lie about my story and say it's like everybody else's, here's the deal. My mother contacted a police officer and told on me and turned me in when I went to prison at 17.
Amazing.
See, because let me just say this to you, Lou, it was still part of an era. I was still part of an era where there were police officers or detectives. If something happened in someone's community, someone knew someone who could call a police officer they could trust.
Exactly.
To handle a situation in a way that would diffuse it. They, rather than letting some others come to it where it might get worse. So my mother found someone to contact.
Yeah. Who
they believed could come there. And and let me just say this, at 17, you can imagine how angry I was with my mother, how resentful I was. And here's what she ended up telling me years later. She said, son, let me say this to you. I would rather see you alive in prison.
Yes.
And taking responsibility for what you did, knowing that I taught you better, than to see you dead and having shot somewhere by the police because you didn't surrender. She said, and I have to come to your funeral. She said, I knew that you would surrender if those police got you in my home.
You know.
And so my mother called on that. So I'm telling you that, Lou, because it's important for people to be honest, to come clean, to get to a place where we can speak about this in a more nuanced way where, yes, there's contradictions. Yes, it's sometimes it's unfair. And yes, for some people, a lot of times it's unfair. But if that's not your story, don't lie. If you know that you went to prison and you got arrested for 3 things, but you did 300, tell the truth.
Yep.
Because the majority of guys I met in prison, Lou, let me just tell you this. They did more, they would confess to more than they were there for.
Of course. They got away with a lot of stuff.
And
they got away with a lot of stuff, of course. Yeah.
These are things that are hard to say when in a climate where everyone wants to be black or white, right or wrong.
Yeah.
These are hard things to say because they get taken out of context and people want to pigeonhole you. But what I'm saying is, if we really want to get to reconciliation, those of us who have been on the side of doing wrong, deliberately and intentionally and premeditatedly, we have to get on the front line now of telling the truth and speaking truth to power and speaking truth to those who say that they're powerless.
Yeah.
So it's something that we have to do collectively. And I'm up to the task of doing my part. That's what I think, and that's what I want my life to be an example
Professor
of.
Professor Khalil Osiris, now you do lectures around the country? Yes, of course, you're an international lecturer. So how would someone say, now you say you live in South Africa, so how could someone here in the States, if they wanted to use you, because I watch you talking to a bunch of young inmates, and I could read them, and I could see them.
Yes.
They weren't just stroking you. They were intense, and they were interested. You touched the button with them, and I saw that. And I was saying, the person I was sitting with, I said, if he gets to one of those kids in that audience, we're ahead of the game.
Yes.
We're ahead of the game. So, but how can what I'm leading to is people, people could use what your services, you may because who can dispute what you went through, what you've done and what you achieved. And, America's the country. It's up to you.
Yeah. Lou, I was 20. Listen, Lou, after 20 years in prison, I was
Amazing.
40 years old when I got out. 40. And I made a commitment. Let me just say this. I made a vow, a spiritual vow. You hear all the stories about what you can't do. No one's going to hire you. You're doubly convicted,
right,
convict,
right.
ex-con criminal.
Right.
Nobody's going to hire you. And don't even talk about that degree you earned. People know that degree was in prison. You can't do anything with that. I said, okay, that's fine. They said, and I said, well, how much of the whole pie would you say that is eligible for me? They said probably about 10%. I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make the 10 my 100. So I made a commitment that I would spend the next 20 years doing the things that I was deeply passionate about. And rather than going out begging for a job, I went out and volunteered at the Urban League on a program where they were trying to identify, they were helping children of incarcerated parents. I volunteered, Lou. Right. And guess what? When I went in to volunteer, I gave my resume to the president and CEO, Mr. Willie F. Walker. Sent him the resume. He looked at it. He said, SOCF. He said, what is that? I said, Southern Ohio Correctional Facility. He said, NOCF. What's that? I said, Northern Ohio Correctional Facility. He said, well, were you a deputy warden? I said, no, sir. Scholar in residence. He said, scholar in residence. I said, yes, sir. I said, inmate 211-402.
Amazing.
He said, like a criminal, like an inmate? I said, that's the footnote, sir.
How'd you wind up?
Let me tell you the story.
It's amazing. How'd you wind up in Ohio from Florida, from Jacksonville, especially?
No, because I'm living in Jacksonville now because I'm doing my organization is here.
I got it. Yes.
Yeah, Reflecting Freedom Network.
Yeah.
So,
you just.
But I've traveled. Lou, I moved here from when I came back from South Africa.
Right.
So after 7 years in South Africa, I moved back to the U.S.
Amazing. Well, what do you? So it leads me in to ask you a question. What do you think about the President Trump's criminal justice reform that was finally finalized?
I think hands down, the Second Step Act, hands down, it's been the most celebrated criminal justice reform legislation that we've had to date. It's been the piece of legislation that across the aisle, there's no naysayers who
why wasn't that done before?
Cast aspersions about
it's
good
like you said,
that it's able to do.
Yeah, you just said it. See, that's I have a question with the politicians, and why wasn't that done before? With not only Obama, with the Bush Jr. and Sr. Why wasn't it? If it's so easy and it's across the aisle and it's beneficial, why did it take this long?
This is something that. Look, here's what I've been saying. Mass incarceration is America's existential crisis.
Yes.
So here's the only parallel we have. We're 4.5% of the world's population, and we have 25% of the world's prisoners. The only parallel we have to that, the only national parallel we have to that is we're 4.5% of the world's population, and we have 25% of the COVID
incarcerated
cases
in
the country, COVID-19. Right. So here's what I'm saying. We can look at it from a doom and gloom side, i.e. curse the darkness, or we can look at it from light the candle side.
Yeah.
And I choose, having been a person, Lou, who spent 20 years in prison and was 40 years old by the time I got out, I know that I'm capable of changing, and I had to do the hard work of literally manifesting that. So I am not someone who can point a finger at any human being and say that this person is a bad person and this is a person that can't change. This is why I look at these young boys, and this is what I appeal to, Lou.
Yep.
I look at them and I say, tell me your best.
That's right. And you do it. Yeah.
Tell me your best.
Wow.
And so I started the organization Reflecting Freedom Network.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. So you have a documentary on that as well, don't you?
Yes,
Yeah.
we have a documentary called Truth and Reconciliation Conversations.
Right.
If a person goes to literally reflectingfreedomnetwork.com, the Truth and Reconciliation Conversations is there on the site. But I want my friends to know about, in addition to the video, to the documentary, and listen, we talked with criminal justice leaders, we talked with the district attorney, we talked with the attorney general here in Jacksonville, Florida. I mean, these are some people who have the entire spectrum of views, who all spoke about solutions.
Now, in the RFN, the group that we're talking about now, how can people be an asset to you? The listenings.
Yes.
You like volunteers or financial or whatever.
Yes.
Because
listen, we have on our website,
right,
we have scholarships for people to earn accredited high school diplomas and to participate in job training and career development on our website. And people can simply donate any amount.
Oh, good.
We provide all of our services. It's a web-based free reentry support network.
Wow.
Lou, any person that's been impacted by incarceration can go to the website onenetworkusa.com. That's the number one, networkusa.com.
You hear that,
and
folks?
They can register for free services. Everything is free. They can earn career badges. They can develop their resumes. Lou, they can even do it on their phone. It's a mobile app. They can download the mobile app and do it remotely.
And they don't have to get a bachelor's or a master's like you. They can get skills.
And it's not a GED, Lou. It's not a GED. It's a high school, fully accredited high school diploma.
It's amazing.
So if they don't have a high school diploma, we put them on a track to earn their high school diploma. Yeah. If they already have a high school diploma, we put them in the job training and career development.
Wow.
So when we have donors, what we do is donors will support the work, and donors are able to see how many people are being impacted in ways that hold individuals accountable for doing the work to transform their own lives. And here's the deal, Lou. We make it all free because here's what I'm saying to you. As a business person, you know the term return on investment.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I say. With the population we're working with, you have to look at return on engagement. And return on engagement is when you provide a service to a group of people for free that removes all the excuses, all the barriers to them succeeding. And then you say it's free. Now show me how engaged you'll be in using it to change your own situation.
That's great.
So we're able to show an employer, look, these individuals signed up on this date. Look how much they've accomplished in this short period of time. That's the kind of employee that you want. You want someone who's going to be hardworking, that's going to be determined, who's going to outperform everybody else. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Those are the characteristics that you want as an employer. You can train the other stuff. So we're able to provide a matrix for that. And let me just say this, Lou. Here's another thing that's counterintuitive about what we're doing. In addition to it being web-based and a mobile app accessible in this climate of social distancing and COVID-19, in addition to all of that, it's available to correctional staff and their families.
Wow. It's amazing.
Think about that. It's available because here's what you know, Lou, like I know. Correctional staff and their families are faced with many of the same challenges that the prisoners are. They're just in one's in a rural environment oftentimes, and another's in an urban environment.
Well,
but
you know, when I first, you brought up a good point. When I first went to correction, speaking to wardens, deputy wardens, he said, add up your time. You're going to be doing a short bit yourself.
That's exactly right. All the people in all good, look, every seasoned correctional person knows that.
That's right.
They know that.
Yep.
So that's because you are participating in a willful incarceration.
Yeah.
And that has a consequence as well. So by creating Reflecting Freedom Network, which is a nonprofit, we're able to work with companies who are able to say, okay, well, we like this as a corporate social responsibility initiative. We'd like to see X number of people touched. So here's an example, Lou. There's 600,000 plus people being released from prison a year in America.
Yes.
We have the capacity to provide a service to all 600,000 from the moment they get out, to reach all of them. Now, here's the key. You have to have a product or a platform that's scalable. Well, we're able to do that because we're web-based.
Amazing.
So what we do is we go state by state and we look at organizations that are interested in providing additional web-based employment services and job opportunities. So expanded educational and job opportunities. That organization can get it for free, Lou. We're not charging the organization anything.
I know. I saw that, folks. You hear that? I can't believe we only got
It's free.
We got about 2 minutes left.
So there's no excuse not to be able to take advantage of it.
Yes, Professor Khalil Osiris. Let's repeat the web-based information so people.
Yes.
So
people can go to one network, the number one networkusa.com. One networkusa.com.
And the book, which is pretty much
freedom that comes from within.
Freedom that comes from within is exactly your life story.
Yes.
That's pretty much your life story. You know?
Yes.
So, all right. So now we're going to lose you. You're going to stay in South Africa?
No, I'm here now. I'm home. I'm back home now. I'm back in America. This is home. We've got a lot of projects, but we do, we collaborate with our organizations in South Africa. We have colleagues that are part of our organization in South Africa, and we work with just a powerful community organization there where we work with young people who have been incarcerated and who are there also. There are many of the same challenges. So we work with them in schools and in prisons.
Well, very good. So I got to give Donald Trump a plug then again. There's criminal justice reform because it ties in with what you're doing and what we'd like to see, right?
It's expanded the space of the work that we're doing.
Oh, thank you. 40 minutes went quick. Hopefully I can bring you back again down the road, Professor.
Thanks so much, Lou. It's been great talking with you.
It's great, yes, and maybe I'll say hello if we're both in Florida at the same time. You know?
I look forward to it.
Hopefully. God bless. Nice talking to you.
God bless. Thanks so much, Lou.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
This is Lou Telano. I'm going to take a break now, folks, and then I'll be right back. Take a short break, and then I'll come right back. So don't run away. I'm still here, and I'll be here for